The restaurant went quiet the second I set the folder down next to my mother's wine glass. 22 years of silence, and now a private dining room full of relatives, all of them holding their breath. My mother had just finished telling the table that I'd abandoned the family, that I was hoarding my grandmother's money. My twin sister sat at the far end, too thin, not looking at anyone. My father's jaw was working like he was chewing something he couldn't swallow. I rested 2 fingers on the folder. I didn't open it yet. What I pulled out of that folder is the reason my parents haven't spoken to me since. But to understand how I got there, you have to go back to the night they decided one daughter was enough. I'm Charlotte. If a story ever made you feel less alone, drop a comment and subscribe. I'm a large animal vet in Marrow Creek, Wisconsin, population under 4,000, mostly dairy. I pull calves at 3 a.m. Blood doesn't scare me. People who smile while they lie to you, that's different. My husband Sam welds and runs 40 leased acres. We have 2 kids, Mia and Eli. We're not rich, we're rooted. That word matters because for a long time I wasn't rooted anywhere. You don't forget the night your parents give you away. I was 12. There was a suitcase by the door that turned out to be mine. My mother sat me at the kitchen table in a careful voice. "Charlotte, you're going to go stay with Uncle Raymond for a while." My father, reading his paper, didn't look up. My twin sister Whitney was upstairs with a tutor. Then she'd just won the state science fair, and there were ribbons on the fridge, and a feeling in that house that the future had arrived with only enough room for one of us. I wasn't a problem child. I just wasn't a prodigy. And in that house, those had become the same thing. Raymond's truck pulled in around 7. My mother kissed the top of my head, said, "Be good for your uncle," and went back inside before the truck backed out. Through the kitchen window, I watched her scrape the pot roast into the trash and get on with the evening. A while turned into the rest of my childhood. My parents had twins and treated us like a portfolio. Whitney tested into the gifted program. The resources flowed her way from that day forward. My mother had given up a doctoral program in chemistry the year she got pregnant with us, and Whitney was going to be the version of her the world had cheated her out of. I was overhead, the part of the budget you trim. I once heard my father say it through a heating vent. "We can only invest in one future, Linda. You spread it thin, you lose them both." I was 11. I learned exactly what I was worth on a spreadsheet, and I got very quiet and very good at not needing things. Raymond and his wife Diane never once made me feel like overhead. Diane set a 3rd plate like I'd always been there. Raymond woke me before dawn for a hard birth and said, "You can watch or you can sleep." I watched. Something in my chest came loose. I made myself a promise behind the milk house that I'd never need my parents for anything again, and I kept it for 22 years, until the day they came looking, not to take a brick of what I'd built, but the whole house. 3 or 4 times a year, an envelope arrived in a looping hand, a card, sometimes a folded $10 bill, always signed, "Thinking of you, love, Grandma." My grandmother Eleanor was my father's mother, and against the whole tide of that family, she never forgot me. I had no idea she was doing more than loving me from a distance, that she was watching, counting, keeping things in a wooden box. I finished vet school, came back to Marrow Creek, bought out old Doc Puett's practice, married Sam, had Mia and Eli. Eleanor knew all of it through her cards. Her last one said, "You built something they can't ration." I didn't understand ration yet. Then one Tuesday in February, a call came from a number saved under Diane's name, but it was the care home. Eleanor had had a stroke. I drove the 40 minutes in 30. She was small in the bed, one side of her face pulled down, but her eyes found me and sharpened. "The box," she said. "Wooden box at the house. Things in it you need to know when I'm gone. Promise me you'll open it yourself. Don't let your father near it." I promised. "Good," she said. "Now they can't ration you." She slept, then slept deeper, and 3 days later she was gone. My parents didn't come to the funeral. Whitney didn't come. What did come was Aunt Pam, in a good black coat, steering me to a corner by the coffee urn to ask, in the register people use for money, whether Eleanor had gotten her affairs in order. They hadn't come to mourn. They'd sent a scout. Eleanor's lawyer, Marisol Vance, had held her retainer for 15 years, which told me this had never been last minute. Eleanor had left me the bulk of her estate, a house she'd rented out for years, plus savings fed steadily for 2 decades. Not life-changing to a banker, a different sky to a rural vet with school debt. Marisol also set down a sealed letter and the wooden box, with instructions that I open both alone and a no-contest clause, rare enough that she'd drafted one maybe twice in 15 years. "Your grandmother seemed to expect a challenge," she said. I'd barely set the letter on my counter when the Iowa number called again. My mother, warm as syrup. "Life's too short. We have regrets. We'd love a fresh start, a family dinner, everyone. Would I come?" 3 weeks after Eleanor's death, with a fresh estate in my name, suddenly the perspective. I asked what had changed. "We're not getting any younger," she said. "Family should help family." Help. There was the word under the syrup. I called Marisol, who told me the estate was legally mine and the no-contest clause was solid, but if they wanted to drag it out with a contest, they could make noise for months. Keep records, sign nothing, especially not at a dinner. Then Whitney texted, out of nowhere, after 22 years of silence. "Can we talk? Just us, not them." We met at a coffee place halfway between us. She looked hollow-cheeked and careful, nothing like the golden girl I remembered. Her education tech startup, the one our parents had bankrolled and bragged about, had collapsed 18 months ago. Her marriage had cracked under the debt. She was living in our parents' basement. Then she said the thing that changed the temperature of the table. "When we were kids, I asked Mom once where you went. She said you'd chosen to live with Uncle Raymond, that you liked it better, that you didn't want to come home." I told her I'd chosen nothing. I was 12, and they'd packed a suitcase. Whitney went still. Something load-bearing shifted behind her eyes. I drove straight to Eleanor's empty rental and found the wooden box on the closet shelf. Inside were photographs, me at 6, me and Whitney in matching Easter dresses before the world started grading us, and, underneath, a case file. Old bank statements, a soft manila envelope, notarized legal pages. This wasn't sentiment. This was evidence. Eleanor's letter said she'd been a coward in one way. She'd watched my parents make their choice and told herself it wasn't her place to interfere. So instead, she'd kept what they threw away, including the truth. "There had been money meant for both of us equally," she wrote. "What they did with my half was in the box. I'm not leaving you my house and savings to make you rich, Charlie. I'm leaving them so you never again have to sit at their table and beg for a seat. You earned your seat the day you were born. They're the ones who forgot." The bank statements told it plainly. The Ingram Children's Education Fund, opened for both of us, fattened by relatives and a great-aunt's inheritance, showed steady deposits until I was about 13, the year after they sent me to Raymond. Then withdrawals started, all flowing to Whitney. Tutors, math camp, violin, private school, private college. My half, the half with my name on it, was drained to the cent by the time I was 17, while I put myself through vet school on a decade of loans. They hadn't just decided not to spend on me. They'd taken what was already set aside for me and spent it on the daughter they'd chosen. I brought the box to Marisol, who went very still at the manila envelope. This account had both girls as named beneficiaries. Moving one beneficiary's entire share to the other without consent, while you were a minor, that's not a family squabble. That could be actionable. I told her I didn't want a war, just to be left alone with my real family. "Then make it very clear, very calmly, that going to war with you is a losing move," she said. My mother's text arrived, chipper. "Saturday the 14th, 6 p.m., the Hollowbrook room. The whole family will be there. Wear something nice." She picked the stage, I told Marisol. "I'll bring the script." I decided to go because of where it was. My town, not theirs, in front of the only audience whose opinion my mother had ever managed for. I built a folder that week. The notarized guardianship transfer, the bank statements, a copy of Eleanor's letter. Sam asked if I was sure. "No," I said. "Then yes." I told Mia and Eli a kid-sized truth and left them home with Sam. I wasn't walking in as a wife or mother, as the 12-year-old who'd watched a kitchen window from a truck, finally grown, finally holding proof. Thursday, Marisol called with the piece that turned the folder into something with an edge. A notarized, voluntary guardianship transfer, dated the spring I was 12, signed by both parents, granting custody to Raymond, not temporary, not emergency. In the box for reason, my father's blocky hand. Parents unable to allocate adequate resources to both minors. The lie my mother told Whitney, that I'd chosen to leave, was demolished by a sentence my own parents had signed. Marisol also warned me of the clock. The estate settled formally on Tuesday, 3 days after the dinner. My parents' lawyer had already sent a letter of intent to contest, citing undue influence. They wanted me to hand Whitney a slice voluntarily before a judge ever saw what they'd done with that fund. The dinner wasn't reconciliation. It was a deadline maneuver. 2 days out, Aunt Pam ran her campaign ahead of me, cousins calling, angling for it, swept in at the end, and Aunt's voicemail about my parents' hurt feelings. I didn't fight the whispers with noise. I got the bank to confirm the beneficiary facts in writing and ask Marisol to have certified copies ready. I called Whitney and told her everything. The fund, the guardianship paper, our father's own handwriting. I didn't know, she said, voice cracking. They're letting me live in their house. I have nothing else right now. I didn't ask her to promise anything. That night, my father called for the first time in 22 years, flat and transactional. Your sister's in a hard spot and family helps family. It's time to be reasonable about sharing what's frankly more than your share. Then, without irony, we can only invest in one future. You understood that then, understand it now. The exact sentence from the heating vent, 23 years later, offered up freely because he'd never thought he'd done anything wrong. I said, "I heard you, Dad. I'll see you Saturday," and hung up. The question I'd carried my whole life, was it me? Died right there. There was nothing wrong with me. There was something wrong with the spreadsheet and the man who still thought it balanced. The night before the dinner, Whitney called again, unraveling a memory. She'd once asked our mother why I never came home, and our mother told her Charlotte chose to stay with Uncle Raymond. She doesn't really want to be part of our family. Don't take it personally. Whitney had believed it for 22 years. The whole time, she said, you were the one who got thrown away. Our mother hadn't just discarded me. She'd rewritten me into the villain of Whitney's childhood, so no one would ever wonder if they'd done wrong. I also drove out to see Raymond, 80 now, on his porch at dusk. He told me the call he'd gotten the day my father sent me, asked, like I was a heifer he couldn't carry through winter, and how he'd said yes before my father even finished asking. Family isn't the people who can afford to keep you, Charlie, he said. It's the people who never once did the math. I carried that into the room the next night. The Hollowbrook room was warm and low-lit, a long table under a brass chandelier, my mother in pearls, performing host, my father heavier and grayer, Pam sharp-eyed by the door, a scatter of aunts, uncles, cousins, Whitney small and pale at the far end. My mother hugged me like a stage direction. I let her seat me, put my bag on the floor, and waited. Raymond taught me you don't rush a hard birth. You wait for the moment, then pull once, clean, all the way through. Over the entree, my mother turned the warmth toward the ask. Whitney's hard time, the business, the divorce, and a glance at me. Some of us are blessed. Grandma Eleanor, she said, wasn't quite herself at the end. Made decisions that weren't fair to everyone, but we can fix that as a family tonight. She had a paper folded by her plate and a pen, certain I'd cave under 15 watching faces. I asked her, calmly, why she thought the will was unfair, and she gave the table her wounded saint version. I'd abandoned the family, swept in on a confused old woman, left my sister with nothing. She said the word truth 3 feet from the folder that held it. I let the silence stretch, then lifted the folder onto the tablecloth beside her wine glass. This family does deserve the truth, so let's start with mine. I laid out the guardianship transfer and read my father's own line aloud. Parents unable to allocate adequate resources to both minors. I didn't choose to leave, I said. I was 12. You signed me over because you decided you could only afford one daughter. I turned to Whitney. Did she tell you I chose to stay away? The whole table turned with me. My mother shot her the old look that used to end every argument in that house. It didn't work anymore. I laid out the bank statements next. The deposits, then the withdrawals starting the year after they sent me away. Every dollar toward Whitney's tutors, private school, college, while I financed vet school on loans. You didn't just give me away, I said. You spent me. My father, unable to stand being accused without defending his logic, said it out loud to the whole table. We can only invest in one future. 15 witnesses heard him confess to the exact philosophy that had governed giving away his daughter. Pam tried to save the ship. You've twisted everything, poisoned your grandmother. Now you're hoarding money and putting on a show. So I took out my phone and read the table my mother's own text, sent to the whole family group chat by accident an hour earlier, and then hastily deleted. Once she signs Grandma's share over to Whitney tonight, we put all this behind us. Don't let her leave without the agreement. Be warm, but firm. I passed the phone down the table. Pam's chorus of cousins read it in her own words, and the whisper campaign collapsed on the spot. Then Whitney stood, shaking, and told the whole table what our mother had told her at 12. That I'd chosen to leave, that I didn't want to be part of the family, that she shouldn't take it personally, and how she'd believed it for 22 years while our parents spent my college money on her and let her hate me for it. You stole my sister from me and told me she left, she said to our mother. And our mother broke, the host's mask gone, screaming about everything she'd sacrificed in front of the aunts and cousins she'd performed for her whole life. When she finally ran out of breath, I gathered my papers, unhurried. I'm not signing anything. Grandma's will is valid and it settles to me on Tuesday. The education fund is a separate matter. My lawyer has the records, and you may want to talk to your own attorney before you talk to me again. To the rest of the table, I said, gently, that most of them had simply been lied to for 22 years, and I didn't hold that against them. Mom, you spent my whole childhood managing what this family believed about me. Tonight you can't manage it anymore. I put a card for Marisol into Whitney's hand, not for the estate, for her, if she ever needed to get out of that basement on her own. Call me as a sister when you're steady, not as a bank. Then I walked out into the cold, clean dark of my own town and didn't look back. The estate settled that Tuesday exactly as Eleanor had built it. My parents' lawyer, once he understood what the bank statements and guardianship paper meant, quietly withdrew the contest. Word moved through the family. Cousins called me embarrassed and apologetic. Pam went quiet and isn't welcome at most gatherings anymore. My mother posted a weepy thing online about ungrateful children. Almost no one engaged. You can't whisper a story to people who watched the truth happen. The fund dispute is proceeding properly through Marisol, on paper, not guilt at a dinner table. I'm at peace with however it lands. The money was never the point. The point was that there had been money with my name on it, and everyone now knew what they'd done with it. A month later, my parents' attorney sent a cold, formal letter. I'd been removed as a beneficiary of their estate. I felt relief. They'd taken back something that was never really mine, a place in a family that had only ever measured me. I signed the acknowledgement without hesitation and mailed it from the same blue mailbox where Eleanor's cards used to arrive. Whitney called in the spring, not for money. She'd used Marisol's referral, found work, moved into a small place of her own 2 states away. You said to call when I was steady, she told me, so I'm calling. We talked for an hour, 2 sisters learning each other from scratch, carefully, the way you'd approach an animal that's been hurt. It isn't fixed. 22 years doesn't close in one phone call. But the door is open now, on honest hinges, and we use it. She came out to the farm in June and watched my kids run across the pasture where I got married, where Raymond first handed me a flashlight in a cold barn. Eleanor's old house is rented now to a young family who keep chickens and wave when I drive by. She spent her last years quietly building me a shield out of bank statements and love, and it's why I never had to beg for a seat at that table again. She gave me proof, and with it, peace. Here's what 22 years and one folder taught me. Family isn't the people who can afford to keep you. It's the people who never once did the math. If you've ever been told you were the one they could manage without, the spare, the overhead, the long shot not worth the investment, you weren't. They were just bad at counting what mattered. You don't have to shout it. You just have to set it on the table. Share this with someone who needs to hear it tonight, and I'll see you at the next table.